When I'm starting to save for my next down payment, here are the creative ways that I would think about finding that money and getting it for myself in order to invest in a home. Hey, my name's Brennen Clouse. I'm a real estate agent. I've helped over 325 clients buy and sell property over the past 9 years, and I myself own 7 properties as an investor. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what I would do if I were thinking about saving for my next down payment, which I am always thinking about. And here are the things that I think are most important to consider as you think about where you'll get that money. Okay, let's start with the first and hopefully the most obvious option, which is down payment assistance programs. There are government-backed down payment assistance programs throughout the country, depending on where you live. Sometimes there's geographic parameters, and they usually have income limitations per household. So you do have to do a little bit of research into those, but oftentimes they can cover not only the down payment, but the closing costs. Of course, there could be variable interest rates on those and other things that you do need to be careful of, but down payment assistance is one of the most important things that you should be thinking about if you are starting to save for your first down payment and even down payments after your first one. These are really good programs that I don't think are taken advantage of enough. So start with a simple Google search about what is available in your area for down payment assistance and what are the terms on those loans. Number 2 is borrowing against your 401k. If you have money saved in your 401k, this is a great option to start looking at in terms of borrowing from yourself. When you borrow money, typically you can borrow up to $50,000 from your 401k, and you do have to pay that money back to yourself with interest, but that interest is going to you. So it can be a benefit as long as you make sure that you are paying it back. Now, typically there is a timeline when you are paying this money back, so you have to pay it within 5 years. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer, but it really depends on your plan and what your company has provided as an option to you. Now, the one risk here is that if you were to leave your job, you could potentially have to repay the loan from that 401k right away. So make sure you know all the terms of this option and how much money you have in your 401k so that you can be smart about how you borrow against it. The third creative way that I think that not enough people are thinking about is potentially a whole life insurance policy. So you do have to have this money saved up and invested, but if your whole life insurance policy has enough cash value, you can actually borrow against it without any credit check or income verification, depending on the plan. And then there's usually a flexible repayment on that. It's basically determined based on the whole life insurance policy you have and the terms of that policy, but these often have very low interest rates. So I think the one that I have right now, the interest rate is around 5 to 6%. So it's close to a mortgage right now, but it's not as high as, let's say, like a credit card interest rate. So it's a great option to pull money out. Now, the risk here is that if you don't repay that money to your whole life insurance policy, it's going to reduce the death benefit of that policy. And when you start to look into whole life insurance policies, the death benefit is basically how the policy grows over your lifetime and what could be paid out eventually. And so you do have to be careful of making sure that you repay that and that your policy doesn't lapse for some reason for not repaying or continuing to contribute to it. But that is a risk in general of the whole entire policy. The other thing I'd think about is borrowing from a brokerage account or something that's also called a portfolio loan. This is called a security-backed line of credit, securities-backed line of credit. Basically, this means that if you have a portfolio or a brokerage account where you invest in the stock market, if that account has enough money in it, you can actually borrow against that account while your investments continue to grow in the stock market and continue to be invested in the stock market. And usually these are very low interest rates as well. So it's a great way to continue to have your money grow while you borrow against it. And usually these are really easy to get approval for because most lenders who are lending on this care more about the size of the money that you have invested as opposed to your current income. So especially if you're someone like me, for example, who is self-employed, you may want to look at this securities-backed line of credit because it is based on how much you actually have invested in this portfolio that you want to borrow against. Now, there is one risk here that if your investments were to drop quite a lot, you could hit something called a margin call, which is when they could force you to repay that. So you want to be careful about that and know, again, all of the terms. That's a common theme throughout all of these, is you need to know the terms of everything you're doing and understand exactly what's going on before you actually borrow against it. Those are the 4 places that I would start to think about pulling money from in order to save for my next down payment and to get me the best bang for my buck, especially if I don't have money set aside right away in a savings account. If you do have money set aside, one really good thing to do is also to put it in a high yield savings account where you can get really good interest on that money, typically around 3.5% to maybe 4% depending on the market. And that's a great place to keep your money so that when you are ready and you find that perfect home, you're able to pull that out and use it as your down payment. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you think of other ways that you'd put money aside, put them in the comments below. I'd love to know if there's other creative ways that you're saving for your down payment or finding money that you've already invested to borrow against. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Brennen Clouse, and if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for all of our future real estate videos for the Seattle real estate market.